Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking under the hood of literally the greatest engine on Earth, evolution. We're going to unpack the fascinating mechanics of exactly how biological populations transform, adapt, and survive over successive generations. It's a brilliant, ongoing mechanism that dictates the past, present, and the future of every single living thing. So think about this for a second. How exactly did a single common ancestor give rise to the millions of incredibly unique species we share this planet with today? It's honestly one of the most profound mysteries of the natural world. But the answer isn't just some ancient history lesson buried deep in fossils, It's a highly observable, active process happening all around us right this very minute. It is the fundamental logic of life itself. To make sense of all this, we're going to map this massive story out into 5 really digestible chapters. We'll start with the blueprint of life, move into the forces of evolutionary change, explore outcomes and adaptations, trace the history of life, and finish up with evolution in action today. All right, Chapter 1, the blueprint of life, looking at heredity and variation. Let's start at the very base level. Every single heritable characteristic is passed from one generation to the next via DNA. But instead of just thinking of it as some complex, abstract chemical, think of DNA as a master instructional blueprint. The sequence of bases along a DNA molecule specifies genetic information, exactly like a sequence of letters spelling out a remarkably long sentence. Right before a cell divides, this entire sprawling sentence is painstakingly copied, spelling out exactly how to build an organism from scratch. It's literally the raw data of existence. Now, there is a super crucial distinction in biology between what's hidden and what we can actually see. Your genotype is your complete hidden set of genes buried deep within your genome. But your phenotype? Well, that is your complete set of observable traits. It's the brilliant array of colors on a butterfly's wing, its physical structure, and even its specific flight behavior. And while the surrounding environment can definitely influence those physical traits throughout an organism's life, that hidden genotype is the underlying code making the whole shebang possible. When these traits inevitably change over successive generations, we classify the scale of that change in 2 distinct ways. First up is microevolution. This happens within a single population. Think of a localized shift in the frequency of dark versus light wing color in a specific group of moths because their forest environment changed. Macroevolution, on the other hand, is the exact same biological process, just stretched out over massive timescales until entirely new species split off from their ancestors. It's the same exact engine, just running for millions of years instead of mere decades. But here is the major catch. Evolution absolutely requires genetic variation to work. Without variation, there's literally nothing for nature to select from. Everything would just be perfectly identical. So where does this crucial variation come from? Well, it's constantly fueled by DNA mutations, which is the ultimate original source of new genetic material. Then we have sexual reproduction, which reshuffles these genes into entirely new unique combinations. We also see gene flow, as migrating individuals carry their distinct genetics between different populations. And, fascinatingly, there's horizontal gene transfer. This is where organisms, particularly bacteria, swap genetic material directly with each other. It's almost like trading playing cards, completely bypassing traditional reproduction altogether. Let's dive into Chapter 2, Forces of Evolutionary Change, and look at the mechanics of survival. The process of natural selection follows a brilliant, honestly kind of ruthless logic. First, organisms naturally vary in their physical traits and behavior. Literally no two are exactly alike. Next, in an environment where resources are inherently limited, whether that's, fighting for sunlight in a dense jungle or competing for scarce prey out on the tundra, some of those variations will inevitably give an individual a slightly better chance at surviving and reproducing. Finally, because these winning traits are heritable, those advantageous variations get passed down to the next generation. Nature itself does the sorting, preserving traits that are perfectly fitted for survival, while the less adapted traits just slowly fade away. Now, it's really important to understand how natural selection differs from the other major evolutionary force, which is genetic drift. Natural selection is driven by environmental fitness. Like a sharp-eyed eagle picking off the most highly visible prey, it actively pushes beneficial, survival-oriented traits forward. Genetic drift, however, that's just a roll of the dice. It's driven by pure mathematical chance. It's the random fluctuation of gene frequencies from one generation to the next, regardless of how useful or harmful a trait might be. In smaller populations, drift is incredibly powerful. Pure luck can completely eliminate certain traits overnight or make entirely neutral traits dominant over time. It's survival of the luckiest rather than survival of the fittest. Moving right along to Chapter 3, Outcomes and Adaptations, and how this shapes the natural world. These adaptations can be incredibly specific and wonderfully bizarre. Take the wild boar piglet. Specific mutations in their melanin receptors give them these disruptive camouflage stripes, allowing them to perfectly blend into the dappled sunlight of the forest floor and hide from predators. Or consider the Mexican blind cavefish. Over generations, it completely lost its eyes. Why? Well, because building and maintaining a highly complex eye in total pitch-black darkness is a massive waste of metabolic energy. We also see lightning-fast microscopic adaptations, like E. coli bacteria rapidly evolving to resist our strongest antibiotics. And sometimes, evolution completely repurposes existing traits, a process called an exaptation. The African lizard Helaspis gantheri originally evolved a flattened head just to squeeze into narrow rock crevices. But over deep time, it became so incredibly flat that the entire body now acts as an aerodynamic wing, letting the lizard literally glide from tree to tree. How cool is that? Now, looking at all these incredible, finely tuned adaptations, it's super easy to assume that evolution has some sort of grand master plan. We really have to clear up this common misconception right now. Evolution has absolutely no long-term goal. It's not striving for perfection, it has no endgame in mind, and it definitely does not guarantee greater complexity. It's a blind, unthinking process that simply adapts organisms to survive whatever their current local environment happens to be throwing at them. In fact, if you want definitive proof that complex, highly intelligent life isn't the ultimate goal of evolution, just look at the global biomass distribution. Microscopic prokaryotes, simple, single-celled organisms without even a nucleus, make up roughly half of the world's entire biological mass. Think about that. Simple organisms have been the undisputed dominant form of life on Earth throughout its entire planetary history, and they fiercely hold that title today. Complex life only seems dominant to us because, well, we're part of it, and it's what we happen to see when we look out the window. Okay, Chapter 4, The History of Life. Let's take a journey through deep time. To really grasp evolution, we have to wrap our minds around the staggering scale of deep time. Our Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago. By roughly 3.5 billion years ago, the last universal common ancestor emerged. That's the microscopic single-celled origin point for every single living thing today. Fast forward billions of years to 538 million years ago, and we hit the Cambrian explosion, a massive, sudden burst of biological diversity shaping the ancestors of modern animals. And modern humans? We only showed up a mere 250,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, on the grand evolutionary clock of our planet, we essentially arrived just milliseconds before midnight. Over these billions of years, relentlessly driven by the engines of mutation, natural selection, and genetic drift, this process has literally never stopped running. The result? Scientists estimate there are currently 1 trillion unique species living on Earth today. 1 trillion. And the most incredible, humbling part of that number is that we've only discovered, described, and categorized a tiny fraction of a single % of them. The vast majority of our planet's spectacular evolutionary story remains totally unseen and unknown to us. And finally, Chapter 5, Evolution in Action Today, covering its applications and implications. The principles of evolution aren't just trapped in amber. They're actively shaping our society right now. Through thousands of years of artificial selection, humans have guided evolution to domesticate plants and animals, building the very foundation of global agriculture. In the labs, scientists are actually harnessing directed evolution, running repeated rounds of rapid intentional mutation and selection to engineer incredible new life-saving antibodies and treatments. But, nature always pushes back. We're currently locked in a fierce, high-stakes battle against the rapid evolution of pesticide-resistant weeds, devastating our food supply, while simultaneously facing the deadly, real-time spread of antibiotic-resistant superbugs in our hospitals. Evolution is happening right in front of us, every single day. As the renowned evolutionary biologist Theodosius Dobzhansky famously stated back in 1973, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. This single framework is the absolute key to human understanding of the natural world. It takes all the disjointed, chaotic, and downright bizarre facts of natural history, and it unites them into a coherent, predictable, and observable science. Which leaves us with a final, pretty pressing thought. Evolution is far from finished. As the microscopic world around us continues to rapidly evolve, with pathogens continuously mutating to bypass our very best medical science, how will humanity adapt to survive this ongoing biological arms race of the future? Definitely something to think about the next time you hear about a new viral strain making the news. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.